Good evening, C3 parents. I hope you're having an amazing evening and welcome to tonight's discussion where we're actually going to talk about neurodiversity. Now, neurodiversity is quite a big thing, so I need to put in a disclaimer. First of all, I'm the parent of a neurodiverse child, and I am not an, necessarily like the know it all regarding that. There might be a couple of things that I could get wrong tonight, but in general, I've done quite a vast amount of research. But if you do suspect that you are neurodiverse, or if you do suspect that you have a child that falls on the spectrum, please go see a professional person and get the right support, get the right information. And you'll see why I say that. So, disclaimer, I am not a necessarily a now I forgot the word. But yeah, let's dive in. I'm a parenting coach, so let's dive into inclusion, neurodiversity, and why it matters, and brain development, and all of that. Now, I'm not a specialist. That's the word. I'm not a specialist specifically on autism or ADHD or um, things that aspects of neurodiversity, and there's more aspects to neurodiversity from OCD to Tourette's to epilepsy. Neurodiversity is quite a big field, and that's why people specialize in certain areas. Now, the thing that prompted me, okay, now I've wanted to talk about, because I've got a neurodiverse kid, I've wanted to talk about parenting and neurodiversity and how it all fits together. But what prompted me to actually postpone the original conversation that I wanted to have regarding the parenting side of things that will now happen in 2 weeks' time is because of a post that I saw. So I'm going to read the post to you. Um, there's a person that posted the following, dummy thick goth GF. She posted, TikTok, mental health has ruined you all. Everyone you don't like isn't a narcissist. Every unpleasant experience isn't trauma. Every time a person disagrees with you is not gaslighting. Being sad sometimes and happy sometimes doesn't make you bipolar. Having a habit is not obsessive compulsive disorder. Feeling all your feelings at the same time is not realistic. Rewatching movies or shows and listening to the same songs doesn't mean you have trauma or severe anxiety. Being hyper or overly caffeinated doesn't mean you're manic. Having needs or wanting love doesn't make you codependent. Behaving differently, sound around different surroundings is not dissociative identity disorder. Not being able to focus on something you aren't interested in or motivated in is not ADHD. Any mental health issue, disorder, illness that you self diagnosed isn't legit. Mental disorders are not cute personal quirks or personality traits. Mental illness is not exciting, fun, or meant to be quickly or relatable. They are very real problems for those of us legitimately affected by them. Please see actual medical professionals and go to get real therapy if you feel the need to, and knock it off with this bleep. Right. Now, the reason this was kind of stirred me to actually have this very unprepared conversation is I would like to actually unpack this. And I'm going to see if I can actually. No, I won't be able to do that. All right, I won't be able to copy and paste the stuff. I will find a way to share that specific post with you all, probably on my Facebook page as well. Now, the reason this conversation is important, the TikTokers that talks about neurodiversity is extremely important because they create awareness. They make people realize to think further than what their lived experience is. And for some people, it goes like, oh, okay, that ticks quite a couple of boxes. Maybe I should get help. Saying, and I think that's the thing that we need to start from the beginning, saying that someone immediately needs to go for medical help. Yes, but that's also a very privileged comment because not everybody has equal access to medical support or to the right resources and support. And that fits into the narrative of inclusion. And you'll see when I'll bring it all together again a bit later in this conversation. But this is an incredibly important conversation to be had, because um and there's a part of me that disagrees, because self-diagnosis, there is a need for self-diagnosis, because acknowledging is the first step into the future, but or to getting the right help. But the big issue, and I think that that probably is the heart of this post, is that there is, unfortunately, TikToks is very short. Yes, you get YouTube series and YouTube videos and YouTube makers that actually really dive into amazing information. So do yourself a favor, go follow. There is quite a few ADHD, autistic, um, Tourette's, people living with seizures, epilepsy. There's so many people on the spectrum, even people that's just sensory sensitive, that lives on the spectrum, that actually has YouTube channels that is focused on education. Don't follow just one, follow many of them, especially in the direction of where you do suspect. So if you do self-diagnose, go follow many of them. And the reason why I'm saying that is neurodiversity is called neurodiversity for a reason. It is diverse. Not every person that is autistic, not every autist, sorry, my mistake with not every autist, not every person that is ADHD will have the same experience. Not everybody that went through trauma will have the same tick boxes that you can tick. There is online um, things available where you can actually go and check on those things. Go check and go, what is the signs of, and then whatever diverse, neurodiverse challenge you think or suspect you're facing, and you can actually get a list of things that is medically approved, that has been studied, that gives you a roundabout idea. Okay, you know what? I tick this many boxes. Maybe I need to get help, or okay, I am there. What is the next step? How do I move forward? So I don't want to bash the TikTokers. They're doing an amazing job, but they've got very short snippets. So they just give one, two, or three things that they personally, in their diagnosis, struggle with. Um, but it's just to create awareness. And the reason awareness is so incredibly important is for inclusion. We live in a neurotypical world, a world where sounds, expectations, smells, lights, everything is catering towards the neurotypical. Access is catered towards the neurotypical. And the same way that we do believe that you need to have a ramp to make a building, or all buildings, wheelchair accessible, you need to actually have the right width of door to get the wheelchairs through. So it needs to be disability accessible. A lot of times, because neurodiversity isn't upfront, you can't, it's, neurodiverse people don't walk around with a little sticker on their head and say, "Hey, I'm neurodiverse." They don't. And kids with neurodiversity grows up to become adults to live in a world where they're bombarded with things that is completely not inclusive, that actually excludes them, makes them inaccessible. Um, Simple thing like going to the shops and just buying groceries can be extremely inaccessible for a neurodiverse person who is sensitive to sounds, to smells, to lights. And if the supermarket isn't even stacked logical, it can actually be extremely problematic for a person with ADHD, because then it becomes a big challenge to stay focused and actually buy what they need, instead of just continuously impulse buying, because that's one of the challenges their brains have, is impulse control, and also organized thinking. So have the shop organized so it's easier for them to think, that to process things. So when we think about ADHD or autism or any other form of neurodiversity, um, we need to think logically also about what does that inclusion mean? What does it do to the brain? It is something in the brain. Um, for ADHD, I know that it's dopamine receptors that doesn't work the way it should, so it's very difficult for them. It's disorganized thinking. It is feeling overwhelmed with a mess, but unable to get a mess to not be like to get it organized so it's not messy anymore, so the mess just grows bigger and bigger. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of the challenges that people with ADHD live with. With autism, there is a struggle to understand social cues, but what happens is there's this approach that people have towards people with neurodiversity, and that is, first of all, you don't look at, because apparently they need to walk around with stickers on their forehead. Um, but you cope well with this, or you can concentrate on that, or you look as if you don't like me, and it's just because there's a complexity or in a gray area where their brain struggles to understand the gray areas in life. There's certain nuance, and we kind of miss it. And as neurotypicals, we and I still identify as neurotypical until I get diagnosed. I myself am struggling with ADHD. I tick most of the boxes with ADHD, but I've not been formally diagnosed, so I need to give that disclaimer. So until I actually have a formal diagnosis, I will approach every conversation that I have regarding neurodiversity that I am a neurotypical. And the big challenge is that things aren't inclusive. Um, and saying that, I will not sacrifice my kid on the altar of inclusivity. However, the school system, the way classes are set up, the sizes of classes, the pace at what education is running, it creates a space where it's us and them. If you go look at how society function, it's us and them. And the thing is, it is not fair. And being a parent of a neurodiverse child, you start picking up on the things that you perceive as, well, that's just the way life is, or that's just the way the world is. And you realize, but you know what? It doesn't have to be this way. We can change it, we can approach it differently. So, back to the Facebook post, because I'm going on a ramble. Like I said, this is a very unprepared conversation tonight. Um, when we look at things like the TikToks, and when we look at things that gets highlighted, understand that that is that person's lived experience. It is not a diagnosis for you. And what happens is, I've so many times people said, "Oh yeah, but everybody's a little bit autistic," or they are not everybody. There's people that say, "Oh no, but everybody is a little bit autistic," or everybody's got a little bit of ADHD, or everybody's got a little bit of OCD, or um, you know, uh, tics, or things like that. And what happens is it actually minimizes the struggle of the neurodiverse. And I think that is the heart of this post. It's not saying that, yes, this person specifically did state that they do not support self-diagnoses, and I can guarantee it's because their fingers have been burnt. When it comes to things in the brain, the unseen illnesses that affects people's life dramatically, it is not quirky. It's ableist to go and say, "Oh, but I'm a little bit OCD because you just prefer straight lines." Preferring straight lines does not mean that when you see something skew or that's not a straight line, that it feels like your whole body is on fire, and that it completely inhibits your ability to function. It just means it annoys you and it bugs you, and you're aware of it, but it doesn't impede your ability to function. Neurodiversity, when someone actually falls on the spectrum of neurodiversity, it means that the neural pathways of their brain works differently. Their brain does not do what the majority of people's brains does. And that means that for them to be able to function in society, they have to mask, they have to try and find other coping mechanisms, and it really becomes very difficult for them to actually become fully contributing members of society. Where if we approach it from the way like, how can we approach society and make it more inclusive and do equity, not equality, equity, give them what they need to be able to function fully in society, society will be much richer. There will be far more enrichment in life, and there will be more compassion and more empathy and more patience. But with this post, initially, people will have a knee jerk reaction because I honestly feel that there is space for self diagnosis. But if self diagnosis means that neurodiversity gets downplayed the way it is being downplayed, then it becomes a problem. And at the rate that there's self diagnosis that people make, uninformed self diagnosis is the problem. And uninformed self diagnosis actually causes huge, huge, huge problems for those with neurodiversity because it makes it so much more difficult to understand neurodiversity. Not all autists will have a huge issue with a big group of people. Not all of them, but the majority of them will. But not all people that have an issue with big groups of people is autistic. And if someone realizes, oh, you know what, I think I might fall on the spectrum, and they go seek help, but people have this attitude of, oh, well, you're just self diagnosing, and everybody's a little bit autistic, or everybody's a little bit OCD, or a little bit ADHD, or whatever, then it becomes very difficult for that person that truly needs the help, that actually it's truly debilitating in their life, to get the right help, because it is so easy then to just dismiss them. And so many people on the spectrum have been dismissed for the majority of their life until they finally had someone that was willing to listen to them and help them get diagnosed, help them to get the right support. So, for the people who do self diagnose, please make sure that it's an informed diagnosis. And because I don't want to dismiss you. That's not the aim of this conversation. It's not about dismissing, it is about accepting and saying, but I suspect this because this triggered me thinking. I did some research. I need help. And we will all fight for you to get the help. We do honestly believe that if you do suspect, that you should be allowed and should be able to get access to the right medical support. Unfortunately, due to a couple of people or a lot of people going self-diagnosing things like OCD or autism or ADHD when they're just slightly forgetful or just prefer straight lines or they have certain rituals, um, that doesn't put them it puts them it doesn't put them in a debilitating position. It becomes a problem with people with real issues, struggles. I think that the last bit that I want to add to this rant or this conversation that I have tonight, is the same way that when we're talking about the self-diagnoses people, and I know that those who watch this, and I will probably get a few knee jerk reactions, and I'll get a few people that gets upset with what I have to say, and that's also okay. It's like saying when someone says hashtag Black Lives Matter and you reply with hashtag All Lives Matter. Neurodiversity matters. Diagnosis matters because diagnosis also helps with care, it helps with support, it helps not just those diagnosed, but those supporting and taking care of the diagnosed people. Because it's so much easier then for us to say, this is the specific need that my kid have. They don't have a discipline issue, it's his brain that is working against him. And while I'm on the topic, since this is my rant tonight, please, for everything that matters in this world, just like you will not refuse someone insulin when they're diagnosed as a diabetic, please do not refuse the medicine your person, your kid, you or you yourself need for your neurodiversity, that your brain needs, just because you're scared of the chemicals. Yes, it's going to take a journey with a professional to make sure that you get the right meds, whether it is regarding mental health issues or whether it is regarding neurodiversity. It's going to be a journey to get the right meds, to get to the right diagnosis, to get to so that your brain actually can work with you and not against you. I've unfortunately seen in so many circles where when someone is diagnosed with neurodiversity or with mental health struggles and they actually get professional help and the professional says we need to start this medical treatment for your brain to be able to function, that, and it's usually parents with kids, that the parents then refuse to go the route of the pharmaceuticals for their child, and that kid suffers for even longer. Journey with, you went to the professional to get a diagnosis, you went to the professional to get help. Trust them that they will actually help and go on the journey with them. They're not going to willy nilly just thumb suck and do things, that actually control it. Go through the right steps to get the right help. And I'm saying this, and I know having access to medical support is a privilege in most countries in the world. But if you have access to medical support, refusing your child the medicine they need to be able to function and live their life is very unfair and life threatening. Just because you cannot see the brain and how certain centers of the brain is just not doing what it's supposed to do does not mean that your kid does not need that. It stumps me every time that when it comes to an any other illness or any other disability, parents will bend over backwards to get their kids the right medicines, to get their kids the right tools and access to. But the moment it comes to something that needs in the brain that needs support, that door gets shut. It's and the parents just turn their backs on the kids. Don't turn their backs on the kids, but they refuse the kids access to the things that has been studied and proven to actually do the job. Um, so that's me getting off my soapbox tonight. um, so the long and the short of how everything fits together. If you are in a position where the only thing you can do is self-diagnosed, please do an informed self-diagnosis, first of all. Second of all, if you do suspect, due to the awareness created by social media, that you've got trauma, that you need support, that you need help, and you can afford it, go get the right medical help. Go see a psychiatrist, go see a psychologist, go see a doctor, go get the help. Go see a therapist, go and get the help. And please stop using ableist language to dismiss true, authentic neuro struggles, whether it's mental health or whether it is neurodiversity. Please just stop. Someone is not OCD because they like things a certain way. Someone is not bipolar because they're having, during a difficult time, having difficult emotions and struggling with certain things. Not every single person you meet that treats you badly is a narcissist. Not every single thing. Life is full of difficult stages. Not every difficult thing is necessarily a trauma. Is there people that are more sensitive to trauma? Absolutely. But this conversation, this one specifically, we need to start doing better. We need to start fighting for inclusion for our neurodiverse people, where you have shops that is actually have shopping hours, that is not so, the lights are not that bright, the music's not playing, where the shops are actually logically stocked, where things that belongs together is together, um, where there is support, where there is help, where the schools have small enough classes that the kids can actually attend a mainstream school, that it is okay and normal for a neurodiverse kid or a kid that struggles with mental health doesn't gets included instead of being ostracized, where when a child is having a meltdown, instead of being shunned, where they're being included and the parents are being supported. When an adult, because here's the thing, neurodiverse kids grow into neurodiverse adults, where a neurodiverse adult actually has the right support structure, has help, has support that is goes beyond just mom and dad, that actually that they have a home and a space within society. So I'm going to finish off there tonight, otherwise I'm going to keep on rambling and keep on preaching. um, Please stay safe, guys. I know the beginning of this video was probably very jarring because it was off the cuff. I initially wanted to just unpack that line for line, but there's just so much running through my head at the moment, where I think the only thing that I can say, guys, is stay safe, check your privilege, check your inclusion, and just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there, or that person's not struggling with it. And if you self-diagnose, please do an informed self-diagnosis. It's a spectrum for a reason. It's a huge spectrum. And start following awesome and amazing autists and ADHD and bipolar people. They're just go find a space where you can actually learn. And even if you are not a on the spectrum, and if you don't have a relative on the spectrum, go follow people on the spectrum. Go learn so that you can learn how to be more inclusive. Cheers.